Every single person who has ever been afraid of the ocean thinks the same thing. Sharks. That's the answer. That's always the answer. The white triangle cutting through the water. The rows of teeth. The dead eyes. We've seen the movies. We've heard the stories. For decades, the great white shark has been the face of oceanic terror. But there's something in that same ocean that looks at a great white shark the way you look at a sandwich. And it's not bigger. It's not faster. It doesn't even have the same kind of teeth. What it has is something far more terrifying. It thinks, not on instinct, not reflexively. It literally plans. It teaches its children. It remembers its enemies. And a few years ago, scientists witnessed something that forced them to rewrite everything they thought they understood about who actually sits at the top of the ocean. Because orcas, the animals everyone calls killer whales, the ones people take their kids to see perform at marine parks, started hunting blue whales, the largest animals that have ever existed on planet Earth. And that should not be possible. Which raises the question, how does a 9-meter predator kill something 27 meters long? How does a 6-ton hunter take down a creature that weighs 150 tons? The answer is so strange and so unsettling that it changes everything. Absolutely everything. Let's start with the blue whale, because without understanding what that animal actually is, you cannot understand why what happened is so extraordinary. The blue whale is not just a large animal. It is the largest creature that has ever lived on Earth. Not in the ocean, on the entire planet, in the entire history of life. Larger than any dinosaur. Larger than any monster from the prehistoric seas. Larger than anything we can genuinely picture in our minds. Its heart weighs as much as a small car. A child could swim through its aorta. A single heartbeat pumps more blood than most humans produce in a lifetime. Its tongue weighs more than an elephant. That's not a metaphor. That is a literal, biological fact. When a blue whale moves through the water, it creates a wake. It leaves a trail visible from space. Its call is louder than a jet engine. It can be heard thousands of kilometers away beneath the surface. If you were ever placed next to a blue whale in open water, you wouldn't be able to see the whole animal. Not because of poor visibility, because it would simply be too large for your field of view. And here's the problem. A creature like this should not have natural predators. Biologists said exactly that for decades. An adult blue whale is the pinnacle of size-based evolution. Nothing can kill it. Nothing even tries. That was simply accepted as biological fact, except in 2019, a team of researchers off the coast of Western Australia witnessed something that wasn't supposed to happen. Orcas, 3 females and 1 young male, attacked an adult blue whale, not a calf, not a sick individual. A fully grown, healthy, adult blue whale. The hunt lasted several hours, and the whale lost. It was the first documented case in the history of science. Researchers stood on the deck of their vessel, unable to believe what they were seeing. Some later said their hands were shaking as they filmed. But the longer they watched, the stranger it became. Because the orcas weren't just attacking. They were working. Like a coordinated unit, with roles, with tactics, with something that looked uncomfortably like a plan. And that's where things start getting truly strange. Orcas as a species have existed for 11 million years. For comparison, humans have existed as a species for roughly 300,000. Orcas are older than us by a factor of 30. And in that time, evolution built something completely unique. The orca brain is one of the most complex in the animal kingdom. In terms of brain-to-body size ratio, orcas are second only to humans. But it's not just about size. It's about structure. Orcas have regions in their brain that humans don't have. Literally, neuroscientists have identified cortical zones whose function we still don't fully understand. Zones that appear to be connected to social bonding and emotional processing, but at a level of complexity for which we have no human equivalent. Which raises the question, why would a predator need a brain like that? To hunt blue whales, that's why. Because killing something 20 times your size is not a physical problem. It's a mathematical one. It's logistical. It requires coordination, planning, and real-time adaptation in ways that pure instinct simply cannot provide. Here's how it works. Orcas live in family groups called pods, but that word barely captures what a pod actually is. This is not just a group of animals staying close together. This is a structure with hierarchy, with tradition, with culture, and scientists use that word officially, with knowledge that passes from generation to generation. Every pod has its own dialect. Literally, the sounds used by one group of orcas are not understood by other groups of the same species. These aren't just different signals. These are different languages, evolving separately over thousands of years. And the hunting techniques are different too. One pod specializes in marine mammals and uses waves to wash seals off ice floes. Another herds fish into tightening spirals. And a third, and this is where it gets genuinely frightening, a third learned to hunt whales. But this creates an even bigger problem. If every pod learns its own methods, then somewhere, at some point in history, one single orca decided to attack a blue whale for the first time. Alone, without a plan, without knowing whether it would work. Who was that orca, and how did it survive long enough to pass the knowledge on? We don't know. And that unknowing is itself a mystery worth sitting with. But let's come back to the blue whale, because it is not helpless. And understanding how it defends itself is what makes this hunt so extraordinary. When an adult blue whale senses a threat, it does several things. First, it accelerates. A blue whale can reach speeds of 30 kilometers per hour. That sounds unimpressive until you realize what 30 kilometers per hour actually means when it's 150 tons of animal heading in your direction. A single strike from that tail is the equivalent of being hit by a freight train. And the tail is the whale's primary weapon. It doesn't bite, it doesn't ram. It whips that tail with enough force to kill an orca instantly. One accurate strike, hunt over, hunter dead. At first glance, that seems like an insurmountable advantage. But evolution had a different plan. Orcas developed a tactic that neutralizes this weapon completely. And once you understand it, it's more unsettling than the hunt itself. They attack from every direction simultaneously, but not randomly. Every orca has a role. Some distract. They swim directly in front of the whale, forcing it to change course. The whale is enormous, and sharp turns are metabolically expensive. Every direction change burns energy. Every burst of speed depletes reserves. Others block. They position themselves beneath the whale, preventing it from diving deep. Because in deep water, the whale is in its element. The orcas need to keep it near the surface, confused, exposed, and others attack. They target the most vulnerable areas: the lips, the tongue, the jaw. The whale loses blood. The whale fatigues. The whale's resistance gradually collapses. This is not instinct. This is tactics. This is military strategy, developed, refined, and transmitted across generations. But here's the detail that makes everything stranger. The young orcas barely participate. They swim alongside the hunt and watch. The older members of the pod are literally showing the next generation how it's done. Scientists call this cultural knowledge transmission. In humans, we call it education. In orcas, it's an evolutionary advantage that has been compounding for millennia. Which raises the question, if orcas plan, teach, and adapt, what else do they know that we don't? And the answer to that question is more disturbing than the hunt itself. Researchers working with orcas off Norway, Alaska, and Patagonia began noticing something they couldn't explain. Orca populations in completely different parts of the ocean, populations that have never had contact with each other, sometimes develop strikingly similar hunting strategies. Not identical, but similar, as though they independently arrived at the same solution. Biologists call this convergent behavior. But behind that term hides an unsettling implication. If separate orca groups in different parts of the world reach similar conclusions, that means their brains are functioning as genuine problem-solving instruments, not as a fixed set of instincts, as real intelligence. But this creates an even bigger problem. If orcas are this intelligent, why hunt blue whales at all? The blue whale is dangerous. The hunt is risky. Orcas die during these encounters, sometimes right in the middle of the attack. Why take the risk when easier prey exists? The answer, and this is where the biological mystery deepens, is not food. A blue whale provides enormous amounts of nutrition. Yes, but orcas don't require it to survive. They eat fish. They eat seals. They eat smaller whales. The blue whale is not a dietary necessity, which means hunting blue whales is something else. It's status, it's demonstration. It's a way of showing the younger members of the pod what the group is capable of. That sounds almost human, and that's not a coincidence. Because in neurobiology, there's a structure called the limbic system. It's an ancient part of the brain responsible for emotion, social bonding, and motivation. Humans have it, orcas have it too, and in orcas, it is developed to a disproportionate degree. Scientists at Emory University scanning orca brains found something that stopped them cold. In the paralimbic region of the orca brain, there are specialized cells called spindle neurons. Humans have them, higher primates have them, and these cells are believed to be responsible for the capacity to feel things genuinely, empathy, attachment, grief. Orcas have 3 times more of these cells than humans do. At first glance, that seems like an interesting footnote, but think about what it actually means. If orcas feel more intensely than we do, what exactly are they feeling when they hunt? When they lose a member of their pod? When a mother carries her dead calf on her back for weeks, and that behavior is documented, it happens. What is happening inside her? And what happens inside a creature that remembers? Because orcas remember. For a long time, there are documented cases of orcas targeting specific vessels that had previously harmed members of their pod. Years later, recognizing the boats by the sound of their engines. This is not random aggression. This is targeted. This is memory applied with intention. And that raises a question that biologists are careful not to ask too loudly. If orcas demonstrate memory, culture, language, tactical thinking, emotional depth, and the capacity for what looks like intentional retaliation, does that meet the threshold for calling them conscious beings? And if it does, what does that mean for their place in the ocean? And for ours? Let's go back to the hunt, because the story isn't finished yet. In 2019, that encounter off Western Australia lasted several hours. 3 orcas against 1 adult blue whale. The whale fought, it ran, it accelerated, but the orcas didn't stop. And here is what the researchers on board noticed at a certain point. The whale stopped trying to escape. It rolled onto its side. It stopped striking with its tail. It simply allowed it to happen. Biologists call this tonic immobility. When a creature recognizes that resistance is no longer viable, the nervous system essentially switches off the fight response. It happens in sharks, it happens in dolphins, and as it turns out, it happens in blue whales, the largest animal on the planet, surrendering. That should have been the end of the story. The orcas won, done, but then something else happened. And this is the reason the story was worth telling from the beginning. When the hunt ended, when the whale went still, one of the orcas, the oldest female in the group, an individual estimated to be over 50 years old, did something unexpected. She swam away from the group. She stopped. She simply hung in the water, not moving. The researchers watching couldn't explain her behavior because she wasn't eating. She wasn't doing anything observable. She was just there. What was she thinking in that moment? What was she feeling? Was she experiencing something resembling an awareness of what had just happened? Or was it simply exhaustion after hours of pursuit? We don't know. And that unknowing might be the most important part of this entire story. Because this story is not really about orcas killing blue whales. That's just the fact. Astonishing, but just a fact. This story is about the reality that our planet is home to creatures whose inner lives we cannot access. Creatures that have existed far longer than we have, that are more intelligent than we find comfortable to admit, that feel more deeply than we are prepared to acknowledge, and that, by all available evidence, watch us with the same curiosity with which we watch them. 11 million years of evolution did not just build a predator. It built something for which we still don't have the right word. And maybe the most unsettling conclusion of all isn't that orcas hunt blue whales. It's that they do it not because they have to, but because somewhere along the way, they decided they should. Is that instinct? Or is it something we'd recognize in ourselves if we were brave enough to look? That's the question. And right now, we don't have an answer.